listening to the Pocket Hole Podcast with your host, PDF Pocket Hole.
Welcome to the Pocket Hole Podcast.
Hooty-hoo! Welcome back to the Pocket Hole Podcast. We've got an array of effects here, ladies and gentlemen. Our budget is through the roof. It is
Sky high.
Well, actually, we only really have the reverb and the voice changer. But it's still 2 more effects than the average man. Don't panic, it's just a Pocket Hole Podcast.
There is no need to worry. PDF Pocket Hole will make sure that you are safe and warm.
I'm back after more than a year's absence, which is a very long time in podcast years. But it feels good to be back. I've been doing plenty of training montages and jumping up and down on the steps of City Hall, and I'm stronger than ever, as you can tell from my large presence. And I'd just like to start off with a list of quitters and failures that I am better than, just to get me in the mood for podcasting. So there's a lot of quitters and failures out there, and by failure I don't mean the act of failing, I mean people who are themselves failures of beings. Because a lot of people... Okay, so there's a lot of people who try to make a podcast, and then there's people who don't even try, and that's the real failure. The failure to try. But don't forget about the quitters, because there are people who try, and then they quit, and quitting is also failing. So, quick list of quitters and failures. Number 1 on the list, Squidgy Black. He is a failure from my high school, who I am now better than because I haven't quit. I'm still here and I'm still going. So Squidgy Black, we used to go to school together. He always had dreams of grandeur of being a podcaster. We used to always talk about the creative endeavors that we would get up to when we grew up as adults. And here I am, all grown up as an adult, playing with my toys for everyone to enjoy. And rhyming while I do it. Whoa! So Squidgy Black, you are still a failure because you still haven't tried to make a podcast. And second on the list, this is more of a quitter than a failure. Nizzle Nozzle, the fictional horse racing drama podcast. They went for 15 seasons strong, but at the end of that 15th season, they said, hey, you know what? Nizzle Nozzle is taking a quick break. We will be back, they said. We will be back to do more podcasts. We're not quitting. And guess what? It's been 3 years and Nizzle Nozzle still hasn't released another episode. It is what you must have, and it is what they have not. Nizzle Nozzle, quitters! And last on the list is Brandon Doback. This guy is so pathetic he doesn't even exist. I just made him up. Brandon Doback hasn't quit, he hasn't tried, he's nothing. He is literally nothing. Alright, so this might be a good time to address the new listeners. There might be someone out there, just one person, one lonely person out there who is wondering what the hell is going on. I know you're looking around left and right. Can anybody tell me what the story is here? I'll tell you, new listener. You, my friend, have picked an excellent place to start, because this show has no inside jokes. And you might be wrongly led to believe that all of this intro that you've just heard is some big inside joke. You might be thinking, who is Squidgy Black? Who is Nizzle Nozzle? Why is there a list of quitters/failures that this man is better than? You're not missing anything. Everyone is in the same boat here. This is number 1. This is the beginning of the
Pocket Hole Podcast.
All you need to know right now is that there are no inside jokes on this show, except for the following inside jokes. Inside joke number 1. You are a PDF file. And don't get that confused, because when I say you are a PDF file, I understand what that sounds like. In Myanmar, there is the People's Defense Force, which you do not want to go to Myanmar and say that you're part of the People's Defense Force and say that you're part of the PDF, because they will execute you. It is very tense over Myanmar. Myanmar? I don't really... Well, all you need to know is that you are a PDF file, which means that you are a fan of PDF Pocket Hole. PDF doesn't stand for People's Defense Force in this podcast. PDF file is not what you think it is. It's simply a portable... Okay. Rewind. Now, this is also another thing you need to know. Second inside joke is the rewind feature of the podcast. We have 3 effects on the podcast. One of them is the reverb effect. Another one is the
Low voice changing effect.
And the other effect is the rewind, which is when I make a mistake with my voice. We do a rewind and pretend it never happened. So let's say in a hypothetical example that I was trying to say PDF file stands for portable document file. It stands for portable document format file. So you get it? You get the rewind feature? Third inside joke on the Pocket Hole podcast is Soda Blonde. I think there's a lot of old listeners who still don't even get this joke. Soda Blonde is a band, okay? Well, no, it's a person in a band of the same name who was very rude to me one time a couple of years ago. And I've made it my civic duty to never ever forget this, because I hate rudeness. And I think if you're rude to me, you can be rude to whoever you want, but if you're rude to me, I will never, ever forget. Ever! And I will make it my life's duty to make you one of the very few, very select few inside jokes on the Pocket Hole podcast. But I need to clarify now, because a lot of old listeners, they think that they're not in on the inside joke, because they say, who is Soda Blonde though? I don't get it. Is that like a popular band or something? Am I supposed to know? No, that's the joke, is that no one even knows who they are, which is why it's so funny to make fun of such an irrelevant band. The fourth inside joke is that I am an unreliable narrator. Do not trust what I say. I am not a hero. Okay? A lot of people, a lot of PDF files in particular in Myanmar, will tell you that I'm some sort of hero, some sort of god, because I can shapeshift, change my voice, change my face, take other people's faces, blah, blah, blah. Shit! Too many rewinds in one episode. The point is, I'm very unreliable, okay? And if you start taking opinions from me and start learning something on this podcast, you're using the podcast wrong. This is a misinformation podcast. And Spotify refuses to put a disclaimer at the start of the show, which is very frustrating to me. I've written to them many times. So maybe we will see about the future of misinformation on the show. Maybe we'll go against the grain and do the unpopular thing to just be straight up information. But I don't know, it doesn't really suit my style. Those are the inside jokes that you need to know. There's no more currently. That's for the new listeners. For the old listeners, don't think I've forgotten about you, you sexy old bastards. For the old listeners, we now have the secret code, which you'll all be familiar with, which I don't need to explain any further. I will now begin the secret code that all the old listeners will know true and well. Yeah! That's the secret code for the old listeners. Oh, you all know what I'm talking about, am I right? Yeah! There you are. Oh boy, it's good to be back. It is good. I have a new microphone, and it is sounding delicious. What a delicious microphone. Oh yes, and in addition to the microphones, we also have added cameras to the budget. Yes, we have a video. Fuck! Shit! Fuck! This is... I'm really trying to give you a good impression of the show, and you know, it's my fault because I'm trying too many new things at once, and I'm just trying to make it fun in every aspect of the show. But But you know what? It's all right. It's all right. We'll just keep powering through despite the rewinds. That's way too many rewinds. All right. So what was I saying? Video podcast? Yes. Go to YouTube and look up PDF Pocket Hole. That's me. And you'll find the video podcast. And I'm actually committing to it, guys. I did a video podcast once a while back, and just only once. And I will admit that I quit. I was a failure. But I'm bouncing back, and now not only do we have the video podcast, but we have video clips, video shorts. We have all types of stuff. So check out PDF Pocket Hole on YouTube. You won't regret it, everybody. All right, and in true podcast fashion, we've done a very long intro. Very long. In fact, that was the second intro. Because we had the regular intro, theme song, intro number 1. But now we are going for intro number 2, because in the budget, we now have multiple intros. I personally wanted to make the whole thing just a non-stop stream of intros. Because I love intros. Intros are the best. But we're going to keep it at 2 to 3 intros. So we have a new intro now, and we're going to play it for you. And this one is going to really blow your socks off. And if you're not wearing socks, then your feet are going to be decapitated. So, the new intro, we can now include copyrighted music because we have a higher risk tolerance and a bigger budget. Let's try the new intro, the copyrighted music intro.
Welcome to the Pocket Hole Podcast.
I ain't happy, I'm feeling glad I got sunshine in a bag, I'm useless.
Ear hole inhalation of good vibrations and information.
Hooty hoo! Welcome back to the Pocket Hole Podcast once again. So what's coming up on the show today? Well, later I'm going to be telling you what happened to the Pocket Hole Podcast. But right now, we're going to go into a small parable. And this is going to be a musical parable because this is indeed a music podcast. And we now have the money for music. We are going to make music on the show. But I'm going to have to slightly censor the story because in order to tell this parable, it involves an invisible force that we're all horribly aware of these days. I think you know what I'm talking about. The invisible thing that has fucked up all of our lives for the past 2 years. All right? Yeah? Okay, you know. So I'm going to have to talk about this thing that has riddled all of our lives. But weirdly, talking about the invisible thing also makes Spotify and other platforms censor what you're saying. So I'm just going to replace the invisible thing with a different invisible thing that's just kind of old news. I think you'll know what I'm talking about. So why don't we just get right into it? This is a small parable. A small parable known as the parable of the lonely podcast host. There once was a very lonely podcast host. His name was PNG Pocket. His name was John the podcast host, and he was oh so very lonely. So he decided to get some guests on his podcast. But it turns out that all the guests who he contacted had AIDS. This was a surprise to John, as he didn't know that everyone could just get AIDS at the same time. But this is the kind of world that we live in now. And he did wonder, was everybody lying about their contraction of AIDS just to not come on the show? Maybe they could smell the loneliness from John, the podcast host. These are the types of things that keep him up at night, wondering why no one will come on his show. And he said, look, I've got this great studio. It's great, it's cozy. I've got a chair, 2 microphones. And people said no. How many times must we inform you that? We have AIDS! AIDS! Did you not hear me say? Bear in mind, this is a parable. It's not strictly true with this John character. But anyway, John enlisted the help of a special somebody. And that special somebody was going to make everything okay. And you know what that special somebody was called? No one. He enlisted the help of no one. He did it all by himself. He purchased all the equipment and learned all the tricks of the trade. But you know what? It wasn't just smooth sailing. It wasn't just fine dining. There were trials and tribulations. He had a very bad microphone. A microphone that was very ill-behaved. This microphone had a dark past. It had filmed some amateur pornography which had been deemed unsuitable by the regulators. Microphone was no good. It was a no-good microphone, and on top of that he bought a whiteboard in which he was going to write some sort of statement or maybe an episode title, and the whiteboard grew sentient. Now I can't explain to you how difficult it is to take care of a sentient whiteboard. I mean, just imagine shoving mashed potatoes into the whiteboard's blank face just to face a blank expression. This was the horrible and lonely life of the lonely podcast host. And even worse than that, on his social media accounts in which he had tried to enlist the help of musicians as guests, he had received a mean comment. And this had nothing to do with his slander of other musicians who he would often make fun of on his podcast. Yes. No, it had nothing to do with that at all. But this mean comment, it was very derogatory and homophobic and racist and xenophobic and all of these words which we love to use these days. And the comment said this: "You are, good sir, a lemon experience high school talent show." And after this, the podcast host, he decided that he would just end it all now. End the suffering, he said. Why not? Just run a hot bath, get a couple sleeping pills, and slip into that long good night. So, in his deepest, darkest moments, the lonely podcast host, as all podcast hosts do, they took their darkness and they turned it into something beautiful. They turned it into a song, which they would play on their podcast, and it sounded like the most beautiful sonnet that you've ever heard. And it was something like this. Why am I so sad? Am I so sad? Yes, I am sad. Why am I sad? Why am I sad? I am so sad. No one wants to come on my show, but it's okay because I am glad. I am so glad that I am so good. Yes, I am so good. Little did he know at the time that there was a window open behind the mysterious curtain, which was the backdrop of his podcast. And through this window echoed the song which he had sang in his beautiful frustration. And everyone on the street below heard him sing this beautiful song in his beautiful singing voice, and they all said, "Pocket hole, John, Johnny, Johnny, John. John, they all said. And even though his microphone clipped during the performance, nobody cared. They just chanted his name, the lonely the lonely podcast host. And then he decided, you know what? I'm going to do a podcast, and it's going to be called the Pocket Hole Podcast. So we've got a traffic update now.
Beep, 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 beep. It's the traffic update. Time to get some updates on the traffic.
All right, we've got the traffic guy live from the US of A.
Oh my gosh, there is actually quite a bit of traffic today. Back to you.
You're okay, right? You're not confused or... You get this. Not that there's anything to get. Well, that's kind of the thing. There is nothing to get. You're not missing out on anything. Don't think... See, I hate the idea that you think that there's something going on when there really isn't. You know? Now I'm probably making it even more confusing if it wasn't already. Look, you're fine, right? You're enjoying this. Oh, okay. Right. Well, that's all that matters. Just as long as you're on for the ride. See, I don't want to confuse people, so let me just clarify a few things, all right? I've been gone. I wasn't there for you. Because I was living my own life, man. I've got my own life. Leave me alone. I've got things to do. But I have been gone now for over a year, and I do owe you somewhat of an explanation. So here's a little bit of an explanation. Not too much, just a little bit. Let's take it all back for a minute to season 1 of the Pocket Hole podcast. It used to come out every 2 weeks. One episode would be a music psychology episode, and then the other episode would be an interview with an Irish musician, which wasn't so much of an interview, it was more just me fucking with people. And that was what the show was. And then what is now known as season 2, it was always season 2. But season 2 was the pandemia madness because I moved to Spain accidentally. I was doing some live concert shows and this pandemia hit and I just got stuck in Spain, which meant that I didn't have access to fucking with musicians, meant I couldn't do live shows as a musician. Most importantly, it meant that I did not know what the fucking F I was going to do with the podcast. So season 2 was my televised spiral into insanity. And season 2 is a bit crazy, because I was a bit crazy. I lost my mind. I'll admit it, I lost my mind, okay? More so than I had already lost it before any of all this. And now what you see as season 3 in the podcast feed is actually the interviews from season 1. So this is technically season 4. But none of that matters. All that matters is that we are here today together.
Isn't that nice?
So that's where we are now. And I could probably talk about it a bit more, but I don't wanna. The most important thing that I want to communicate is that I forgot how to have fun. All that isolation when I moved to Spain, I barely talked to anyone for about 2 years. I really didn't. And, it's not that much fun to make a podcast when you don't know how to have fun or enjoy yourself. Usually, if you put a microphone in front of yourself when you forget how to have fun, you're just going to start complaining about stuff. And I don't like complaining about stuff. I like having a good time, having a good smile and a joke. I love a good smile and a joke. So that's what this podcast is now. It's a smile and a joke. And if you don't like smiling and joking, then you can just get out of here. Go on. No one wants you. But if you do like that, well then, here you are. This is where you're supposed to be.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
You belong here at the Pocket Hole podcast. You no longer have a family.
Forget about them.
You no longer have a family.
They only serve to prevent you from reaching your true potential. I will show you the way to the promised land. I can teach you how to swallow an entire hot dog in one bite.
Hot dog.
I will show you how to create an explosive device using only a Casio wristwatch and lighter fluid. I have been to jail on 4 separate occasions. They were all minor offenses, don't worry. It's all good, don't worry. I borrowed $12,000 for bail but got out on a technicality anyway. So I used the money to buy Bitcoin and shit. Hasn't been going that good lately. I'm hoping this podcast will eat the debt. You gotta help me out. It's only €5 on Patreon, bro.
I am in crippling financial debt.
You went from a whole year and a bit with no PDF pocket hole.
And now you get to listen to this every 2 weeks.
You lucky sons of bitches.
You don't even know what you've got.
So it'll be like that until I die. And that's fine. In fact, it's better than fine. It's amazing. It's good. It's okay. It's great. It's fantastic. So why are we sitting here tongue wagging when we can be getting in to some amazing content?
Amazing content.
Amazing content. This is a music show, so I wasn't around for 2021 because nobody was making music, and I thought, I can't do my job if nobody's gonna be making music, you know what I mean? It's a music show, but everybody's trapped in their houses. You would think, being surrounded by all of their music equipment, that they would make some music, but that's the sad reality of musicians, is that they are humans who lose motivation and the will to live. So having said that, we're going to review the greatest music news of 2021. Because I was not around, here's a little update.
News, and reviews. Review.
So yes, this is the Music News P-View review. P-View standing for Pocket Hole View. A review of the music news through the views of P, which is me. So we might as well start off at the very bottom of the musical hierarchy, which is, of course, my least favorite band, Soda Blonde. They hit the charts this year, or should I say, they sniffed their own farts this year. Onto a less egocentric artist, Kanye West moved into a football stadium this year in order to preview his album Donda. And you know what was interesting about this? Not just the fact that Kanye live streamed his life for, I think it was 48 hours, as he lived inside the locker room of a giant football stadium in Atlanta. He did not require vaccine passports or a negative AIDS test to get into the stadium. Instead, he decided that he would offer vaccines to people in the stadium itself. They had 1,000 of those delicious Pfizer vaccines that everyone just can't get enough of these days. And 13, lucky number 13 people took the vaccine at a Kanye West concert out of 38,000 people who attended. I don't know, I personally choose not to take drugs at concerts. Also, Kanye West changed his name to Ye. Simply just Ye. So he's in the pantheon of famous artists and famous people who have only one name, such as Madonna and Hitler, for example. On to our next news. Kurt Cobain. Pedophile? That's a question, and the answer is no. But Spencer Eldon, who is the naked baby on the cover of Nevermind, you know that album? Come on, man, this is a music show. You gotta know that album. Nevermind, the one with the naked baby. How could you forget such a thing? Well, that naked baby is now a fully clothed man, and he is suing Nirvana. Bit of backstory. So this guy was a baby when that album came out, right? So he doesn't know shit about fuck. He was just a little baby. But now he wants to retroactively get in with Nirvana, and apparently he was trying to call up Dave Grohl and Kurt Novoselic, who runs an avocado farm now. But anyway, he tried to contact them, get in with Nirvana, to no avail, because they were like, fuck off, you little weird naked baby. Weird, it's a weird. Why did I say weird? Isn't weird just the worst word in the English language? So dehumanizing. I've been called weird many times, and I tell you, it's a bad feeling. Can we get a bad feeling sting? Bad feeling. Yes. That's what we do when bad feelings arise. Push them away, push away the bad feelings. Anyway, Kurt Cobain's not a paedophile, and Spencer Eldon, the naked baby, tried to sue a dead man. Fuck you. On to our next news. Machine Gun Kelly. This delightful fellow. Do you know Machine Gun Kelly? He's a white rapper. He has white skin, and he makes rhymes. Have you ever heard of such? Tickle me pink, I say. Machine Gun Kelly spews disgusting anti-mask rhetoric. Well, This was a controversial moment of 2021 that I'm sure everybody is familiar with. At the Chicago Riot Fest, Machine Gun Kelly decided to take shots at Slipknot. In a quote, he was quoted as saying in the quote, I have to turn this down because this is kind of serious actually. Turn the lights on this crowd so I can see those who choose to be here instead of with those old weird dudes with masks. What? Turn the lights on this crowd so I can see who chose to be here instead of with those old weird dudes with masks. What the he continued to say, this is not me. I did not say anything about weird people with masks. That was me. I was quoting, okay? I did not use the W word. I'm just quoting. You want to know what I'm really happy that I'm not doing? He said. Being 50 years old wearing a fucking weird mask on a fucking... What? The fucking nerve on this guy! To call Slipknot weird twice in a row, this is outrageous! Machine Gun Kelly, you dirty, dirty anti-masker, how dare you say that about Slipknot? Don't you know that masks are the faceplates of gods, of kings, of pharaohs, of your ruler one day? Oh, the day that our masked rulers get their hands on you and send you to the chambers for your sins. Don't you know that masks are the way? Masks are the future. Masks are the expression of those who want to take their musical prowess and shove it in your face, their artistry, through visual mediums, transcending music itself. You've got some nerve with your anti-mask rhetoric. Masks are important. Masks will save the music industry. If only everybody wore a mask, we'd have more musicians alive today. I'm shaking with the news that Machine Gun Kelly would have the audacity to say that about Slipknot. 50-year-old weird dudes, you say? You know a stage is the perfect location to wear a mask? You know what's worse than wearing a mask on stage is wearing a mask off stage, in your house, in your bedroom or something, but no. Have no further words for a disgusting individual like you. This podcast is brought to you by MeUndies. Do you wear underpants? If not, you are a sick, grotesquely ugly freak. Buy underpants at MeUndies.com. Enter promo code PANTS for a signed photo of Richard Starkey. Was that a real ad? Is this show actually sponsored by MeUndies? Okay, now we all know what I'm saying on this podcast because you're all listening to me and I am talking. You know what I'm saying, but the whole point of talking is we want to know what everyone thinks about everything, right? That's how this world is going. So we set up microphones in all 7 continents of the world, including the secret continent underneath Iceland, and we recorded what everybody was saying. And we're very happy to have this exclusive audiogram on the Pocket Hole podcast of what everybody is saying.
What is everyone saying? An exclusive audiogram from the Pocket Hole podcast.
They don't even have
It's there. Is this right?
I saw the new Mr. Bean video. It was so funny. He was walking down a sidewalk in front of a building. Fell right into a hole.
Who's Mr. Bean?
He's British. He's from England.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Time for the mailbag!
You've got mail!
Alrighty, so we've been getting your questions in. Of course, people have been wondering what's going on with the Pocket Hole podcast. We've had a jilted existence and I suppose I'm here today to answer a few questions. So, first piece of mail. Dahi Shanahan asks, when's the podcast coming back? It is back. It's right here. Next question. What's the story with interviews? Was that going somewhere? Says Strangers with Guns. Well, yeah, it was going somewhere. We used to do interviews here on the Pocket Hole podcast, and I would like to make it my main squeeze, but the thing is, everyone has AIDS, and they're afraid to come to my house. I don't know why. I'm not going to give them AIDS, but I suppose everybody is just hunkering down, as they say, or if not, they're infected with a disease, and interviews have just become nigh impossible. So ideally, I would have someone sitting here who I would be torturing / interacting with, but alas, it's not the case. Next question. Where did you get your shades? From Anon. And this is a question everyone keeps asking. Where did I get my shades? I don't understand the question. I don't wear shades. I don't even wear glasses. But this question keeps on coming up. And also from anonymous, no one's ever putting their name to this. I will tell you though, I have gotten some shades. If you're watching this on the video systems, you'll see that I've gotten myself a pair of shades and they're pretty cool. This is a great reason to look up the podcast on YouTube because in about when I start counting down, 3 seconds from the countdown, my shades will start lighting up, okay? 3, 2, 1. Whoa, you see this? Wow! You audio listeners are missing out big time, man. I've got light up shades, flashing functionality, and a third option, faster flashing. Flashing at twice the speed that you previously thought possible. Is this podcasting or what? I love podcasting! Final question. Who let the dogs out? That comes from the Baha Men, and I believe the answer is Richard Starkley. So, that about wraps up our mailbag for today. Please send in your questions to PDF Pocket Hole on Instagram, or you can email pdfpockethole@gmail.com. We've got our final segment here. It's a classic. Everybody knows it. Everybody loves it. It is called the Weekly Whacky Track Collage.
Weekly Whacky Track Collage.
All right. So, as you die-hard PDF files will know, the Weekly Whacky Track Collage was a segment in which you would send me some audio clips which I would turn into a little song. It was a bit of a self-indulgent endeavor, I suppose. Makes you feel like you have some participation in the podcast. Makes me feel like I can make music. But I'm on a guitar buzz at the moment, so I don't have my electronic equipment. I'm just doing this, recording this podcast to tape and doing it the old-fashioned way like they used to do podcasts in the 70s. But as you can hear, I have this guitar, and I would like to do a collage song, but in order to do that, I have to tell you a little story about where this song came from. In the town where I was born, there is a shopping centre called Stephen's Green Shopping Centre. Now, from what my intel has led me to believe, Stephen's Green Shopping Centre is named after Stephen's Green, which is a park right beside the shopping centre. And Stephen's Green is named unknown origins. Nobody truly knows, but I do believe it was named after Stephen Greens. And Stephen Greens is the inventor of the shopping centre. Kind of a chicken and egg thing. Which came first, the shopping centre, the park, or Stephen Greens? Well, I suppose Stephen Greens came first. But anyway, Stephen Greens is a filthy, disgusting, greedy man, lowest form of life, because he also invented the toilet in Stephen's Green Shopping Centre. And the toilet is at the very top. He really makes you work for it. You gotta climb up this hefty set of stairs. And I know what you're thinking. Do I have such vitriolic hatred for Stephen Greens just because he placed the toilets on the top floor? No. I tell you that is not the case. I say it's not true. I hate him because he charges money for the toilets. He's a very greedy man. Okay, sure, capitalism exists. He's allowed to charge what he wants. But for the biological impulses of man? No, thank you, sir. Stephen, I do believe you're an oligarch. If I only knew what that meant. But it sounds very bad, doesn't it? Oligarch. Sounds Russian. Which, of course. I'm not even going to get into that. So, greedy man Stephen's Greens has a toilet on top of the shopping centre, preying on the biological impulse of man, profiteering from piss. He's the urination totalitarian. And the problem is, we all piss in Stephen's Green. Because we must. There's no other way. We have to piss. We got to get our shopping done, piss, go to the park. It's just an unfortunate, vicious cycle of life. And this song reflects that. One thing that you also need to know is that here in the town where I was born, there I should say, I'm in Pocket World right now, but in the town where I was born, we called the toilet the Jacks because Jack Stevens invented the toilet. And it's kind of like the way in America, Thomas Crapper invented the toilet. Well, in the town where I was born, Jack Stevens Green invented the toilet. So we call it the Jacks. And that is a true story. So now, without further ado, it's time for the weekly Whacky track collage.
In the town where I was born lives a man who guards a toilet, and he lives a life of greed at the Jacks of Stephen's Green, and he charges quite a toll. Many more of us are very pissed, and he pries into the habits and biological impulses of our piss. We all piss in the Jackson Stevens Green, the Jackson Stevens Green, the Jackson Stevens Green, because we all have to piss in the Jackson Stevens Green and pay a hefty toll in the Jackson Stevens Green. 1, 2, 3, 4, we all piss in the Jackson Stevens Green, the Jackson Stevens Green, oh, the Jackson Stevens Green. We all piss in the Jackson Stevens Green, the Jackson Stevens Green, the Jackson Stevens Green. We all piss in the Jackson Stevens Green, the Jackson Stevens Green, Jackson Stevens Green. We all piss in the Jackson Stevens Green. Oh, we all piss in the Jackson Stevens Green. We all piss in the Jackson Stevens Green. Stevens Green, Stevens Green. When I say Stevens, you say Green. Stevens, 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 Stevens. Green, 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 green. Stevens, 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 Stevens. When I say Stevens, you say Green. Stevens, 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 Stevens. Green in the Jackson Stevens Green. And he lived a lonely life, and he probably died alone, because no one gets to die with their loved ones. We die alone. And so I think he probably realized on his deathbed that he's a sham. And it's true, we die alone in a dark and lonely grave. We all die in a dark and lonely grave, a dark and lonely grave, a dark and lonely grave. We all die in a dark and lonely grave, a dark and lonely grave, a dark and lonely grave.
I suppose we don't die in a grave. We're dead when we get there.
We all die in a dark and lonely grave. We all die in a dark and lonely grave. We all die in a dark and lonely grave. We all die in a dark and lonely grave. When I say lonely, you say grave. Lonely, 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 lonely. Hey, dark
that's it for today's installment of the Pocket Hole Podcast. I had a great time, and that's all that matters. Remember to check out PDF Pocket Hole on YouTube, all the nice video clips that we have there. And if there's one thing that you remember in this world, it's to go to patreon.com/PDF Pocket Hole.
The link is in the podcast description.
And there's already a shit ton of stuff there. If you're a social media abuser, go to either Instagram or TikTok. Those are the only ones I use. I only go there to upload stuff. But technically, you can message me if you need to talk to me in an emergency. If you're gonna send me a message, make sure you start it with help in big capital letters. And then you can talk about whatever you want. And there is one more inside joke, if you can call it that, which I forgot to tell you. And that is hooty hoo. I'll tell you now and I won't tell you again. My old co-host, his catchphrase was hooty hoo. Hooty hoo! And I thought it'd be funny if I just stole it. So now it's my catchphrase. And that's the final inside joke, everybody. You're up to date. And I'd like to close out this podcast with a bit of laughter. People won't remember what you do. People won't remember what you say. They'll only remember how you made them feel. And if I can manipulate you into feeling like you laughed during this show, then you'll be more inclined to go to patreon.com/PDF Pocket Hole. So here's the outro laughter. I hope you had a good time. See you on the next one. Ha ha ha! Ah ha ha! Oh ho ho! Ah!
Welcome to the Pocket Hole Podcast. Sound waves, fucking thoughts in the brains of the human population. Welcome to the Pocket Hole Podcast. Earhole inhalation of good vibrations and information.
Now hold the phone a second. The episode is still going on. It just won't end, will it? We had 3 intros. How many outros are we having now? I'm just kidding around. I know I'm doing this. This is intentional. I actually just wanted to make the episode over 50 minutes. I don't like the look of 49. It's just a weird looking number to end on. So I'll go for about 53 minutes here. And I thought I'll just quickly give you my review of the episode. So I've got my notes. So the first intro, I thought it was pretty exciting. It was a nice way to get back into the show. Some familiar elements, you know, the standard top of the show where we do the fake sponsored by. You know, it used to be, we're broadcasting to you today from, and then we'll have a location, a funny location. But now we're doing the we are sponsored by, and then we'll have a fake sponsor. I like that a little better. And this isn't sponsored by MeUndies. I hope you figured that out for yourself. The second intro. Now, I liked the second intro. I thought that was pretty funny because you wouldn't expect that 14 minutes into a podcast. I don't think I'll do it again, but I did like it there. It catches you off guard. And the fact that I did the copyrighted music, that's just a little foreshadowing because there's going to be a lot of copyrighted music played on this show, which makes it very hard to monetize, but you know, we'll get to that in later episodes, I'm sure. The talky bit, the bit where I was being pretty sincere about what happened to the show, I don't like that. I hate listening to myself being sincere because it's just not funny, not that entertaining, and I don't think I usually get the point across very well anyway. So that was not the best bit, but we got it out of the way. Probably won't happen again too much. We'll do it in the next episode, but after that, we'll slowly phase out the sincerity. It'll be there in pieces, but not such a long segment like that. Then we got into the music news. Now, that segment was totally pointless. The reason it was in was because it was just improvised when I was doing the show. And honestly, I thought that I'd be so good at improvising. I thought my improvisation skills were on point. Listening back, I survived. I survived the music news bit, whereas calling Machine Gun Kelly, I was going to call him MGK as if I'm a fan, like I need to abbreviate his name because I say it so much. I was going to talk about something else, but then the anti-mask thing actually turned out pretty well. I think I can pull out my acting chops when I need to and pretend to be mad at a guy about something I don't care about. So the music news thing, yeah, like we survived, seat of our pants. Then the mailbag, now that was pointless because I went over questions that I already talked about in the talky bit. I mean, it did feel different. It felt different, but ultimately, I should just get better questions. So if you have a better question, you send it to the Instagram page. I suppose, in fairness, the people who sent the questions, they didn't even know what it was for. So that was very nice of them, actually. I take that back if I was rude there. And then the Whacky track. You know, that was another one where I think I saved it halfway through. But Yellow Submarine is kind of a hard song to do, even ironically, because it's just such a terrible song. No. It's not a terrible song. It's well written. It's just boring. It's a boring song. I should have started with Bohemian Rhapsody or something. That would have been thrilling. But at the end of the day, you know, my review, 7 out of 10. That was a 7 out of 10 episode. Because it's only episode 1, so the audience knows, well, it'll get better, you know, especially if he's doing it every week. And you don't know what to expect in an episode like this, so, you know, it was the pilot episode. Now, you see that with TV shows. They always have like a cheap set. The characters don't have quite the wardrobe that they have for the rest of the show, but you look back on it then a while later and you say, that was where it all began. And this is where it all began. So now we just got 53. All right, see ya, bye.
Welcome to